Imagine 3M is a coastal city and there are two potentially devastating hurricanes heading toward the bustling metropolis of MMM. Is the infrastructure of 3M strong enough to withstand the potential devastation of the combat earplug and PFAS forever chemical lawsuits? Should we be worried about holding on to 3M and taking refuge within this once dominant company? Or should we just cut our losses and look for safer ground? What's up, I'm Russ, and here on this channel we talk about making money through dividend investing, and in this video we're going to look at 3M, a little bit at the health of the company. We're going to look at what the potential fallout from the litigation, from the lawsuits that are facing 3M could look like, and then we're going to wrap it up with what I am planning on doing with my 3M shares as of right now. Now, 3M was founded 120 years ago in 1902 and has paid uninterrupted dividends for over 100 years and is a dividend king with 64 consecutive years of increases. They have 32,182 global patents, with 67.5% of them still active, and a portfolio of over 18,000 products that people use every day all around the world. Before we touch on the litigation situation facing 3M, I want to look at the health of the company. Of course, they need money coming in the door, and revenue is indeed up 17% since 2022. Operating margin, which measures how much profit a company makes on a dollar of sales after paying for variable costs of production like wages and raw materials, but before paying interest or tax, is healthy but has declined almost 21% since 2018. Earnings per share is up almost 68% over the last decade and is projected to grow another 7% from here. 3M's net debt reached 68% in 2019, but has since declined 22%, but I think is still a little bit high at 54%. Now, this brings us to one of my favorite metrics, which is the interest coverage ratio, which measures how much operating income a company has to cover every $1 of interest expense. Because too much interest on debt and not enough operating income is bad news, and while declining, we see that 3M can easily cover the interest with $14.10 of operating income to cover every $1 of interest expense, but it is trending in the wrong direction currently. Now, when a company overpays for acquisitions to further grow their business, that's basically called goodwill. And over the past decade, goodwill has been steadily increasing until 2020, where we see it's now down 5%, which tells me that 3M is starting to slow their acquisitions and possibly preserving capital. And it's always good to see if net income can pay off long-term debt in 3 or 4 years, which 3M is just under 3.5 years, so I do like that. Their retained earnings, which is what's left over for reinvestment in the business, is important, and it has been growing and is up almost 50% since 2012. Now, capital expenditures is cash out the door toward purchases of plant, property, and equipment, and we'd ideally like to see that under 50% of net income, which for 3M, it's at 41%. They've also reduced their shares outstanding since 2012 by almost 18% to 579 million, and this is great because it increases shareholders' ownership in the company without doing anything additional. And as of this recording, their dividend is currently a whopping 49% above their 5-year average, and their forward price to earnings is 39% below the 5-year average, making them historically pretty cheap right now. Now, 3M does expect total sales to decline 0.5% to 2.5% year over year from their previous guidance of a 1 to 4% increase. Organic sales growth of 1.5% to 3.5% is revised down from 2 to 5%, and full year adjusted earnings per share of $10.30 to $10.80 compared with $10.75 to $11.25 as they expected earlier. And while Simply Safe Dividends gives 3M a safety score of 75 safe, their last few dividend raises have been less than 1%, as I believe these to be token raises in an attempt to preserve capital for litigation payouts and settlements. So that brings us to the potential settlements that 3M could be facing from the PFAS Forever Chemical lawsuit and the Combat Earplugs lawsuit. So what could that fallout look like for 3M? I gotta start it off with the headline that I've been repeating and everyone is saying. It's this $100 billion payout that 3M could be facing, which I think would be devastating for the company for the Combat Earplug. So where did that number come from? Well, back in February 2022, the combined earplug and PFAS litigation was put at $33 billion, but a few months later, that number has grown to $100 billion just for the earplugs, thanks to a litigation consultant hired by the lawyers suing 3M, and of which 3M strongly disagreed with as unsupported and flawed speculation. Now, out of 16 bellwether trials or test cases, 3M won 6 of 16 for a success ratio of about 37.5%. It's expected there could be 230,000 cases, and if we assume that 37.5% success ratio, that would be about 143,750 plaintiffs would win, and it's estimated the payouts could range anywhere from $5,000 to $250,000, which averages out to $127,500 for a potential payout of $18.3 billion. So that is just complete speculation on my part, and going off the averages, there could be a wide range of outcomes, but check this out. Just this year, 4 U.S. healthcare companies will be paying a combined $26 billion to settle their involvement in the opioid crisis, which unfortunately cost people their lives. AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, McKesson, and Johnson & Johnson will be paying $19.5 billion to communities over 18 years, which would be about $1.1 billion a year. In the 1990s, Dow Corning was hit with a $3.2 billion settlement, about $5.8 billion in today's money, after 170,000 women said their breast implants made them sick. This would lead Dow to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, which they would later emerge from in 2004. In 2007, Merck settled with nearly 27,000 claimants at a cost of $4.85 billion, which would be about $7 billion today, after their arthritis drug Vioxx caused deadly heart attacks and strokes, and Wall Street analysts had estimated their liability would be between $10 and $25 billion initially. Now, in regards to the PFAS Forever Chemicals, on February 20th, 2018, the state of Minnesota settled its lawsuit against 3M Company in return for a settlement of $850 million. 3M has also invested more than $200 million globally towards PFAS remediation, but they could be on the hook for more, much more, as some estimates put the brunt of PFAS litigation on 3M and a worst case scenario estimate of $30 billion. So if we're to believe the headlines, and those playing along at home, that would be about $130 billion of potential settlements for 3M. But 3M has a current market cap of $69 billion. So in my opinion, this is highly unlikely and is just what it is, an attention-grabbing headline number. So if 3M were to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, it's highly likely that the common shareholders, which is you and I, would be completely wiped out or close to it. As a study just after the Great Recession found that of 41 bankrupt public companies that announced reorganization plans in 2009 and 2010, only 4 delivered returns to shareholders. And those returns were pennies on the dollar, so that's the real risk here, and what you need to ask yourself if you're comfortable taking by holding on to your 3M shares. Now, 3M is currently paying out $3.4 billion in dividends annually, so if it came down to the survival of the business or eliminating or cutting the dividend altogether, that dividend is going to go. Now, also in an interesting move by the management of 3M, they are spinning off their healthcare business, which is expected to be completed by the end of 2023. And that will have zero exposure to any of the current litigation from the Combat Earplugs or the PFAS, Forever Chemicals, which is why a new suit is aiming to block the spinoff, as they see this as a move by 3M to protect a valuable asset from litigation which accounted for 25% of revenue last year, and 3M will retain a 19.9% stake that they plan to slowly sell off for cash over time. I also think we won't see this company go into bankruptcy because as of right now, 67% of 3M's shareholders are institutions like Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, not to mention the countless pensions and retirement accounts that have exposure to 3M. 3M has products that are used all around the world every day, and I can't see veterans claiming hearing loss from a few decades ago being as cut and dry as opioids, breast implants, or an arthritis drug use. I think the company is solid enough and they're going to be facing some serious settlements, but I don't think it's going to be enough to push them into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I plan to hold my 3M shares and ride out the storm. I'm not going to be selling. I would add, likely, if we see 3M under $100, which as of this recording, it's certainly trending in that direction, or unless some news breaks that could sway my opinion, which I will cover in a future video. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscription notification bell, because you know what to do, and you also know where the comments go in the comment section below. We'd love to hear around here what you're doing with your 3M shares and what your thoughts are on this whole litigation situation with 3M. And if you'd like to hear a little bit more about those lawsuits and what's going on, click this little box right here next to my head. And if you do that, I will talk to you there.